Welcome, friends, to the Healing Journey with Dr. Jimmy Walters. Today's episode focuses on dreams, not the kind that you have at night, but the desire that God has planted in your heart. I spent nearly a decade working with young adults and helping them, first by identifying their gifts and talents, and second, using these gifts to animate their dreams. But here was the key. The dreams were not only for their own joy and success, but it was also to improve the lives of others. This pursuit of helping others identify and achieve their dreams became the focus of my research. It led to the publication of my first book, Dreams Come True, Discovering God's Vision for Your Life. It also became the foundation of the Catholic Scholars Program, an initiative that I co-facilitated at St. John's University for over a decade. Helping others dream, both in a personal and professional environment, has been a part of my ministry and purpose. And I'm excited to spend this episode focusing on dreaming as a path of healing and bringing greater purpose to your life. Before we discuss dreams any further, let's talk about how bringing our dreams to life are a part of the healing process. First, we must recognize our woundedness. We have wounds, either wounds that were caused by us or by ourselves. Sometimes wounds like sickness just happen to us, not as a punishment or a test. Just is. Healing our wounds, no matter the source, are a lifelong process. But as we heal, we are also invited to be healers. Catholic author and priest Henry Nouwen called us to be wounded healers. In fact, identifying and accepting our own woundedness presents a refreshing authenticity that we often lack these days. One of the goals of this podcast is to help us heal. And in the process, and embracing our woundedness, finding opportunity there. We know from our own lives many people who have taken their wounds and used their pain to find a purpose. Consider the person who became a teacher because when they were young and vulnerable, a teacher cared for them and made a difficult time less painful. Or they believed in them when no one else did. Consider the person who found a career in science, researching a topic that impacted their family in a negative way. Or consider the person who suffers from addiction and dedicates their time to helping others who face the same demons. These are just a few examples pointing out how we can find purpose and healing in our woundedness. Henry Nouwen puts it this way: to be the one who must look after his own wounds, but at the same time be prepared to heal the wounds of others. I'll say that again. To be the one who must look after his own wounds, but at the same time be prepared to heal the wounds of others. Another way of saying this comes from Viktor Frankl, the psychologist and Holocaust survivor, who once said, "What is to give light must endure burning. What is to give light must endure burning." Using our dreams to remedy the pain of others, to bring light into the darkness, is a purpose worth pursuing. But we must be cautious here and avoid two temptations. The first is the need to do something to heal. While the subject of this episode calls you to an active engagement with God, self, and others by animating your dreams, please do not confuse this with the spiritual gift of letting go and letting it be. A future episode will focus on this more. But for now, please do not believe that healing requires only action. Like most things, it is a balance. In this case, healing requires a balance of contemplation and action. Now, while action is our focus today, it is not the only way to find healing. The second temptation is what is known as the savior complex. While we are called to heal, we must do so humbly and as instruments of God's love and peace. I hate to break it to you, you are not God, and neither am I. And neither is anyone that we put on a pedestal. While we try to help others and bring light into their lives, it all comes from God. And the good news is that the divine light that lives within us, and when we allow it, it can shine for others. When we dream of helping others, we are not superheroes saving the day. We are simply wounded companions, offering a healing hand when we have the strength to do so. Perhaps you already do this, And as you consider how you spend your days, you can find peace and purpose in your daily tasks of love. I invite you to consider what God might be inviting you to do differently, or in addition to what you already do. Now, perhaps you are lost or unsure of your life's purpose at this time. The invitation is clearer as you are invited to imagine how you and your gifts are the answers to someone else's prayers. Or perhaps you are lacking energy or focus, and this is an opportunity to revisit what once brought you joy. Just imagine how life can be more exciting and how you can be more driven, finding God in your purpose and in the eyes of another. I'm going to invite you to ponder two questions. The first question focuses on your gifts and talents, and the second question invites you to dream and how you can use these gifts and talents for others. So let's start with the first question. Identify a gift or talent that you have not used in some time. I'll repeat the question. Identify a gift or talent that you have not used in some time. Maybe when you were young, you used this gift or talent all the time, but as life became more complicated, this gift or talent was packed away with your memories. I remember asking this question once during a workshop that I was facilitating, and someone mentioned how they loved to dance, yet they couldn't remember the last time they did. At the end of the workshop, they promised themselves that when they got home, they were going to blast the music and dance once more. Now, maybe it is something that brings you joy, and from time to time you incorporate it in your life, but you have a deeper knowing that it can play a greater role in your life. As an artist, I love to paint, but the task of getting the paint out and making another mess that has to be cleaned feels just overwhelming. Yet I know this gift of painting can lead to the creation of gifts for others, bringing a smile to their face. While I cannot paint every day, what if I committed to doing it once a month, planning for it as I plan for many other tasks that do not bring the same joy and comfort as painting does? You will find that these gifts and talents deserve time in your busy schedule. If you will not do it for yourself, remember that this is something that only you can do as you do it. How can it be a gift for someone else? And that brings us to the second question, and it is a question of dreams. Imagine how you could use this gift to lift the spirits of others, to bring a smile to someone's face, to help someone through a difficult time, to fill a need or a hole in someone's life. As you dream, it is important here to do so without any limitations. There will be a temptation to feel burdened by your to-do list, or finding excuses such as age, time, or budget. Now, this question invites you to see beyond these limitations and to wonder just for a few minutes. From my experience in facilitating many workshops with people of all ages and backgrounds, the older you get, the more difficult this question is to answer. I think we just get tired and even overwhelmed with our responsibilities and our limitations. At times, our own wounds weigh us down and prevent us from taking a new or once familiar step. So at some point today, answer these two questions. Sometimes I ask people to write it down or to draw it, as there's something powerful in putting pen to paper. After you do this, set some goals with deadlines. For example, if your gift is poetry and your dream is to write poems to connect with others, or for others to be seen or heard, begin by just identifying time to write. Take out your calendar and set a realistic goal to write by a certain day or week. You may even purchase a new journal or a pen to match the excitement of your return to this art form. I'd like to share a few examples from my life and how people did this. The first goes back a decade or so, when my grandmother was in hospice. She lasted much longer than we expected, and mostly every day I spent time there to support my mom and family. On one occasion, a gentleman walked in the door with his guitar. He asked if he could sing a song, and we welcomed the distraction. When he opened his mouth, his soulful voice brought joy into that dim and honestly depressing room. He sang for us as much as he was singing for my grandmother as she was preparing to return home to God. I do not know this man's backstory, but I like to think that when he sings for those grieving and dying, he does so with his own wounds in mind. He knows what it feels like to sit in that room, and he knows how painful saying goodbye could be. His gift of music, from one wounded soul to another, left a lasting impact on my own life. Another story is from my own journey. When I was in college, I would spend mostly every Friday volunteering at a children's hospital. During the summers, I worked there, helping in various ways. One summer, one of the patients was dying. Let's call her Gina. She was on life support, and the family made the painful decision to remove any life-supporting devices. My colleagues and I struggled to understand. We didn't have all the information, but we all felt the same feelings. Here was this teenage girl, only a few years younger than us, who was dying. And she was dying before us. Now, one of the nurses knew I could paint. Earlier that summer, I painted a Spider-Man on the wall of the recreation room. And so the nurse asked if I would paint something in Gina's room. I was first uncomfortable as she rested in the bed across the room from the bare wall that I felt an urgency to fill with something beautiful. Occasionally, a nurse would enter to wet Gina's dry lips, and her mom was in and out. But there were many hours where it was just the two of us. So I decided to paint a tree, the most beautiful tree I could imagine, and I invited the staff to join me in adding leaves to make this a team effort. As we painted, we talked to Gina, telling her what colors we were using and what we were adding to the wall. I started to add birds and butterflies, finding that I didn't want the painting to end. I think I didn't want it to end because I didn't want her to die. I found a purpose in accompanying Gina in her final days, doing all that I could and hoping that my presence brought some peace to her. I think of Gina from time to time, and now as a parent, I can better appreciate how difficult those days were for Gina's parents. But I hope that that painting created a time of peace for Gina, certainly for myself, and for all those who accompanied her in her final days. As a third example, I facilitated a workshop for school principals and invited them to dream of something innovative to bring to their school community. One principal had a love for gardening and wanted to build a greenhouse on top of the school building. She imagined how her faculty could incorporate the greenhouse into their science lessons and how they can grow produce to benefit the hungry in her community. It was a wonderful example of dreaming without limits. The reality was that this was not possible, both financially and practically. A tight budget made this impossible, and an older building didn't have a roof to support this effort. So we brainstormed for a bit, and by the end of the workshop, she settled on an adaptation of that dream. She decided to build a community garden on the school property, where there was land that was underutilized. She could still achieve her dreams of enhancing the curriculum and helping the local community. She left that workshop more excited than when she arrived. These three examples of the man who sang in the hospice wing, my colleagues and I who painted a tree for a dying girl, and the principal who planned to build a community garden are shared with you to inspire you to dream yourself. Now I imagine as you listen to this, your mind is already in motion, imagining what can and will be. Earlier, I mentioned that these dreams can be utilized to help others. But take it to a deeper level. What if your dreams help answer someone else's prayers? I'm going to say that again. What if your dreams help answer someone else's prayers? What if God planted those dreams on your heart so you can bring peace and love to somebody else? You may never know, but if you can see your gifts and talents and dreams as helping yourself and helping others heal, your life will take on an even greater purpose. Just imagine how God is waiting for you to say yes and to be an instrument of God's love and peace. Let me finish this segment with these words from Pope Francis. Have the courage then to replace your doubts with dreams. Replace your doubts with dreams. Do not remain hostage to your fears, but set about working to realize your goals. Happy dreaming, everybody. It is now time for our segment, Words of Love, where we turn to the words of another to find hope, peace, and meaning. Now let's return to Henry Nouwen, who we spoke extensively about in the previous segment when he asked us to be a wounded healer. Here is one quote from Nouwen that is related to what we have been discussing. Nouwen writes, "We have become wounded healers." Let me repeat it again. When our wounds cease to be a source of shame and become a source of healing, we have become wounded healers. Now, we can interchange the word shame with fear, pain, or any other negative emotion. The point is to allow our wounds to heal and to, in the process, heal others. This returns to the importance of shifting our perspective of our wounds, no longer seeing them as negative, but as an invitation to help others and to heal ourselves as we walk this journey. Now, personally, as I continue to accept my own cancer diagnosis and seek healing, I am learning that this cancer diagnosis isn't a curse. It isn't because of something I did or didn't do. Some things just happen, and it is out of our control. What is in our control is how we respond. Can we see everything, every wound, and yes, even cancer as a gift? As I said in the first episode, I seek daily the answer to the question of what good can come from this cancer. I believe one answer is to find gratitude in it, to appreciate what it is and what it will teach me, and how it deepens my relationship to you, to others, to self, and to God. Living in a place of gratitude and in a place of wonder and mystery is a far better way to live than living in hurt or shame. Even in the wounds that may be the result of your past decisions, God meets us there to heal us and to guide us all in our future steps. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What good can come from this, if not for me, but for others? Now, I say this and I think of friends and family dealing with some horrific wounds. For example, I have friends and family who lost a son to a drunk driver, friends who lost a friend to suicide, friends who are struggling with a sick child, and too many health concerns to even count. Asking to find gratitude in this pain and suffering sounds sick and frankly cruel. And I am not downplaying this pain. And I cannot even imagine the paths some of them are walking. Yet in the darkness, there remains an invitation to heal, eventually. There is a path forward where good can come from such pain, and at times from evil. We will also discuss this more in future episodes of this podcast. Until then, may our prayer be one of grace toward ourselves and others. May we continue to see God in the midst of life's storms. And may we, in the words of poet John O'Donohue, be excessively gentle with ourselves. It's time for our third segment, What Am I Reading? And one of my favorite recent books comes from Pope Francis. Now, he wrote a book early on during the COVID pandemic titled, Let Us Dream, The Path to a Better Future. I love the book as Pope Francis saw the pause that COVID caused to be an opportunity for a change for the better. Now, sadly, I wonder if we aren't worse off than when we started before the pandemic started. But I like to believe perhaps we are still very much a work in progress. Francis sees our divided world, especially during the early COVID days, as an opportunity for us to be better to one another. He names so many of the problems our society face, including how we see one another, often as problems or as less than. And he offers real examples of people who are responding to the trials of our time with courage and love. Now, this book is quite easy to read. It is not a heavy theological or academic book that we often get from the papacy. At the end of the book, Pope Francis provides a poem titled Esperanza, translating as hope, from the poet Alexis Valdez. I'd like to share the poem with you now. Hope, Esperanza. When the storm has passed, and the roads are tamed, and we are the survivors of a collective shipwreck, with tearful heart and our destiny blessed, we will feel joy simply for being alive. And we'll give a hug to the first stranger and praise our good luck that we kept a friend. And then we'll remember all that we lost and finally learn everything we never learned. And we'll envy no one, for all of us have suffered, and will not be idle, but more compassionate. We'll value more what belongs to all than what was earned. We'll be more generous and much more committed. We'll understand how fragile it is to be alive. We'll sweat empathy for those still with us and those who are gone. We'll miss the old man who asked for a buck in the market, whose name we never knew, and was always at your side. And maybe the poor old man was your God in disguise. But you never asked his name because you never had the time. And all will become a miracle, and all will become a legacy, and we'll respect the life we have gained. When the storm passes, I ask you, Lord, in shame that you return us better, as you once dreamed us. It is time for our final segment of this week's episode, a time of meditation. I'd like to invite you to reflect in the tradition of the Vincentian family. Vincentians, like other Catholic spiritualities, like the Franciscans and Jesuits, have a unique way of living their Christian life. For Vincentians, they and we see the face of Jesus in the face of those living in poverty, those on the margins of society. For St. Vincent de Paul, the founder of the Vincentians, it wasn't until later in his life that he could look back at earlier events and see the hands of God. When St. Vincent looked back and saw how an encounter with a dying servant was an encounter with Christ, it changed his whole life. He looked back at a time when his faith community responded to a family in need, and he began to organize charity. Decades later, he saw those two experiences of seeing a dying man and hearing his final confession and helping that family in need and the organization that followed. He saw it as something wonderful, at the beginning of something. Because of those experiences, communities of men and women, religious and lay, were formed to respond to the injustices of their time. And that same spirit has lived on hundreds of years later. And so I'm going to invite you now to look back at your life as St. Vincent did. This Vincentian reflection invites you to recall a past experience. It could have been earlier today, but decades ago. Recall that moment, and when you do, you're going to ask yourself 3 initial questions. What did you see? What did you hear? And what did you feel? And the purpose of these questions are to bring back that full experience, to kind of paint the picture of what happened. And so take a minute now. Take that minute and recall whatever comes to mind of an experience. Again, it could be from earlier today, it could be yesterday, it could be earlier this week, or it could be from decades ago. And after you identify that experience, ask yourself those 3 questions. What did you see? What did you hear? And what did you feel? Take a minute now in silence to do that. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? And now a fourth question. As you recall that experience, where did you see the face of God? In other words, where was God in this moment, in this experience, in this interaction with somebody else, or with the community, or whatever the experience was? Where did you see the face of God? You may take time later to reflect more on this. And in fact, it's a good practice to incorporate into your daily prayer. By looking back at your past or even just your day, you will further fall in love with God. You will see the divine in all walks of life, and your connection to your neighbor and stranger will intensify. If you live in community with your family or even connect with your friends, talk about the experience, share the memory with them. You never know what you're going to say might be something that somebody else needs to hear. Again, it's inviting that community, that interaction with one another, that is essential. We are not meant to do this alone. Our podcast, this episode started earlier by discovering how your dreams can not only bring you joy, but it can serve others. If you'd like to learn more about this, and even see some more activities to help bring your dreams to life, grab a copy of my book titled Dream Come True, Discovering God's Vision for Your Life, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or directly from the publisher, New City Press. As this episode comes to a close, I thank you for joining me on the healing journey. May you be blessed with health, love, and peace until we meet again.